Hey everybody, we are back at it. Thank you for tuning us in, turning us on. You know, as I said before, this year's theme is a better world, and everybody we're talking with here is all about that. Melissa Rosenberger is joining us here today, and we're going to chat about what life is about, what a better world means, and you know, about what you have discovered in the world that you see changing. You know, first let me thank you for joining us here today.
You're welcome.
What are you finding about this year's conference? What is your sense? If you had to pick a couple of words to describe it, what would you pick?
For the conference? Well, what comes to mind is simply women coming together.
Yeah, right, exactly.
And the potency that that brings to anything.
Potency is a great word, isn't it?
Yeah.
I know. What does it feel like for you? You know, I'm a little bit older than you, so I've had a few years of this. So
Yeah.
what does it feel like, though, for you to see women coming together like this?
It feels old, actually. It feels like a very old template. And it's
Yeah, great.
Well, one of the wonderful things about my workshop was that we had all a range of generations present, which was quite a blessing.
Tell everybody about the workshop. I want them to know.
I did a workshop called The Vulvas of Scythe, Wise Women of Northern Europe. And it's about a tradition called Scythe that actually has had women historically in a role of prominence. They were called vulvas. And they were in the Germanic and Norse regions of Europe. And they were basically independent, free women who traveled and offered their services, oracular and healing, wherever they went. So I spoke about that.
How did you know that you wanted to be part of an energy, a force in the world, this potency? How did you know? When did you know that about yourself and your gift?
Well, in particular, at this time, and in reference to this conference, I feel like the feminine is returning.
Yeah, me too, right?
Yeah, and
Where do you think it went?
my concept is that she was simply in a winter.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, there
Right.
was just a natural phase of some kind where she
Okay.
kind of went underground for a while, but I believe she's coming back, and that we're in that transition period where it's becoming more and more strong, and the sacred feminine is becoming more and more prominent, and therefore more and more important, I believe, to tend to, and
Yeah.
to bring forward in an active way into the communities.
Someone said to me earlier in a chat we were having, you know, they talked about, you know, maybe in Canada, the United States, we've sort of gotten comfortable in who we are and what we think a woman should be. But then they went on to say, not so true in the rest of the world. Women are rising up, you know, and they referred to the new government in India taking a stand against violence for women. You know, do you think that we've gotten a little complacent here, or do you think there's something more silent going on? Or neither?
That's an interesting question.
It is. It was an interesting point that somebody was talking about.
I think we've been complacent.
I guess it's a hard question for you because you haven't been complacent, right?
Well, so what I'll say is I think what I believe we've learned in countries like the United States is that women have actually come into prominence through a masculine model still.
Oh, okay.
Which there's nothing wrong with that. It's simply though that it's a certain way of being in the world. I think we kind of learned how to play that system, and it also
Right.
brought out the masculine within us, which is developed the masculine within us, which is powerful, and there's nothing wrong with that. However, I'm not sure I believe that we are really living from a place of the deep sacred feminine at the same time. And so I don't think that is actually present. I do think the United States has a tendency towards complacency because our life is generally good.
Yeah.
And we're entertained.
Yeah. How do you define the sacred feminine? You know, and how have you come to know it so well?
Well, it's an ongoing learning process.
Yeah, no kidding, right? I agree.
So I am by no means done with any kind of process around that. It's been a gradual reconnecting process, and not necessarily an easy one, but I do believe that ultimately the feminine is instinctive, and that it's present whether we know it or not, and whether we understand it or not. And so it's kind of getting to this place where of letting go and not worrying so much about what anything looks like or how it's being actively expressed, but more maybe called a state of being, but kind of allowing things to let go, be in a state of internal surrender, which in turn allows me to be then in an act or not act in the external world from a place of potency, power.
What do you believe has influenced you most to get you where you are today?
My instinct.
Yeah, no kidding, right? Mine too.
Yeah, because I actually started out in research science. I was in graduate school at the University of Washington for neurobiology.
Yes.
And I was on track to be a research professor.
Right. What happened? What happened on your way to be a research professor? I was supposed to be. I was supposed to be a professor too.
Nice.
Yeah.
And I was also raised in a secular tradition, in a secular family. So I was not raised with a spiritual tradition. My left brain started to turn off.
Oh, wow.
So when I was in grad school, I just actually couldn't read the articles. I couldn't actually do the linear processing as I used to. And I instinctively knew that I needed to do some kind of healing work. And I didn't know what it was, and I had no experience with it, but I just knew I had to do that. And so I pursued it. And it's led me here.
Well, it's interesting because, we look at our lives and how we get to the places we get to. And what I love about this is, if we allow the process to unfold without getting in our own way, we will be amazed at the miracles that show up. What inspires you most today in the world for yourself and your life and your vision?
What inspires me most is the people that I've worked with and the transformation I've seen, the possibility I've seen realized.
Yeah.
When people simply tend to themselves and simply, not simply perhaps all the time, but when we really tend to ourselves as souls on a journey and show up for whatever's needed in order to really thrive. And I've seen people go from halfway houses to graduate school.
Yeah.
And just transform their lives, and people bringing forward their creative gifts into the world. And so I've seen it happen time and time again.
Right.
And I've seen what's possible when we do our work.
Right.
And it's beautiful.
It is beautiful. I mean, it's hard for me to imagine that today I live in the world of possibilities. I'm always asking Spirit, God, what's possible here? What's possible? Like even doing this today. I mean, this is not something we planned for 6 months to do. It was, okay, what should we do this time? How should we show up? And we wanted to show up to give people a portal to share with everyone, where you are, what your contribution is. How do you see your future? How do you see your contribution growing?
Right now, what I see is I'm very much interested in this scythe tradition because it's a spiritual shamanic tradition from Northern Europe, from the Germanic and Norse regions. So it's an indigenous European tradition that still offers a very potent template, ceremonial template. So a few things I see in that. One is that people who are from that heritage biologically have access actually to a shamanic tradition that speaks to their ancestry, which I think is needed for Europeans who have left Europe, maybe in particular. It's also for, what I see in that is a cultural sharing. I see the coming together of ceremonies from different traditions, the spirit practices and offerings from different traditions coming together and sharing their ceremonies, sharing their traditions, so that we can create kind of a network, a global network that, to bring spirit through in service to the people.
It's interesting we're talking about this because, I remember someone was talking to me and asked me a question about the rituals I remember in my life. And I thought for a minute, okay, I took it literal, maybe they're, like shaman. And then I thought, wait a minute. And I said, I remember my grandmother in the kitchen. And my grandmother in the kitchen, there was a ritual around how she cooked food. there was a spirit and energy around it, how she handled the fresh herbs. You know, there was something so kind and honoring about that. Isn't that true for what you're talking about as well? I mean, there is something in the honoring of earth and the rituals in the world that many people fear we're going to lose. You know, many people fear that. What is your sense of it? Are you sensing that people really want to bring those rituals back into their lives?
I do, because I feel like we're kind of coming out of an era where we're a bit orphans. A lot of us are orphans in a way. A lot of us are removed from our ancestral lands. We're also often removed from our extended family. And so I think that creates an environment in which we seek our roots naturally, or a rootedness in something. I do, because I think that the consciousness, I see it as a naturally evolving process. So I think that it goes beyond a bit beyond the realm of individual choice in a way,
Right.
into the realm of the movement of the collective consciousness and the collective psyche. And I believe that we are moving from a place where we've been maxing out on separation and we're going back in the other direction. So I think that'll naturally incline people, yes, to seek out those things that help us feel connected to each other, and to family, and to rootedness.
You know, someone was talking with me about, you know, this idea of what we value most in life and how we show up and value it, and what community has come to mean. I want to ask you about your life and what community has meant to you in shaping you and helping you to become the person you are.
Yeah. Community plays a very important role, in my opinion. And one of the reasons for that is practical, because I feel like the community can hold what the individual cannot. So
Yeah,
I feel
really.
like when we join together in community, we actually engage, the field of potential that's engaged is exponentially greater than perhaps when we engage as individuals in our everyday life. So I think it's essential, because I think communities are intended to hold space for people in ways that individuals simply cannot or have more trouble doing. So I think it's essential. It's an essential process. I do believe, though, that the concept of community obviously has a lot of variations to it, and we have a
Right.
global community, we have an internet community.
Right.
You know, we have much more scope in the terms of what we conceive of as community. So finding ways for those to be meaningful, and for those to be supportive, and for those to help the growth of the individual.
What's the greatest challenge you think we have?
The greatest challenge may be something to do with complacency, or
Yeah.
or a sense or that isolation that many people
Yeah.
come from, because again, what I see as a barrier often for people is the sense that they have the support to do what they need to do, to go through the transformation that we need to do. So I think as a world, we have a lot of transformation to do, and that takes sacrifice, and that takes stamina,
Yeah, it
and it
does.
takes psychological mettle.
Yeah.
And so, you know, having that, and how do we have that? How do we get to the point where we have that psychological mettle to do what we need to do? I think that takes community, and the support of elders, and the support of teachers, and, you know, and the wisdom keepers and the healers.
Yeah.
So I think it takes a community. And so when someone is isolated, it becomes much harder.
Yeah. You know, it's really interesting. I get to talk to a lot of different people, and someone asked me the other day, they said, look, you've talked to so many people. What has literally shocked you recently? What has happened recently that you never thought in your lifetime would happen? And I thought to myself, a lot of things, you know, and then I thought, before I actually answered, I gave it a lot of thought, because I thought, wow, I can't be the only one that's being shocked these days. So for example, the Pope, you know, the Pope coming out and now including, you know, the gay population in a conversation. I don't ever think I would have not in my lifetime, I didn't see that. People like Malala Yousafzai, young woman shot and speaking Nobel Peace Prize. What shocked you lately?
Oh, I guess I would say I'm more pleasantly surprised. Is I don't know if I've been shocked. Would say I was shocked by anything, but I have been pleasantly surprised by the Pope as well.
Yeah.
By some of the progress that's been made.
Yeah.
That's a huge steps forward for the spiritual community.
Yes.
Because I think that's actually important. The spirituality be more accessible to people,
Yeah.
and I think that progress needs to be made. Social progress needs to be a part of that. I don't know.
Well, that's a big one. I mean, for me, every day I'm seeing people come forth in the world. 14-year-old children that want to end childhood slavery. 14-year-old starts a campaign against that. And so there are many, many things that I'm grateful for that we can learn from. And I'm grateful for all the work that you do. So thank you so much for joining me. What's your personal message? What would you like to leave us with today? And tell folks how to find out more about you.
Oh, sure. My personal message would be just to do whatever it takes to have a great life. I think that's the bottom line, I think, for anyone. And so there's so many avenues open today for people to receive the healing they need, to receive the inspiration they need, to receive the tools they need. It's all there. So not quitting until you're there where you want to be, I would say, is my message. Yes, and you can find more about me. I have a website, which is melissarosenberger.com. And that's the best way.
Thanks, Melissa. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Pat.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, everybody. We'll be right back.